As I've said before, every once in a while on Tubi I find a gem that I wasn't aware of, and I found one last night. It's a little bit, I don't know how to describe it. It's called The Artifice Girl, and the letters A and I are in a different color, so I think that gives you a little bit of a hint as to what it's about. But it's different than a lot of other movies about AI are about adult AIs and the consequences of integrating artificial intelligence into our lives. But that's not what this is about. Although in some ways it is. It's from 2002. It was written, directed, and edited by Frank Ritch, who also stars as the main character, Gareth. It stars Tatum Mathews. I'll tell you who she is in a minute. Sinda Nichols, David Girard, and Lance Henricksen. And yes, he is still alive and he is still performing. It was very interesting. It's about a guy named Gareth, who is a person who has worked in special effects. They say that he's worked on one of the Star Wars films, and a recent one, and that he's very good at special effects, and he's being questioned. He's gone to an interview at this agency, and he's being questioned by these two characters, Dina, who is played by Sinda Williams, and Amos, who is played by David Girard. And they're kind of being rather harsh with him, considering that he's in for an interview. They keep asking him what his password is for chat rooms. He says, "I don't go into chat rooms." And Amos keeps saying, "Yes, you do. Tell us your password." And he's like demanding that he give him the password. And finally he does, and realizes that he is actually, he's not what they thought. He's not an online predator. He is someone who catches online predators. And to do it, he uses an image of a girl. And at first they think it's a real girl, and they're demanding, Dina is demanding to know who it is. She says, "Your own daughter? Are you using your own daughter?" He says, "No, you don't understand." Finally he says, "Look, you want me to tell you this? You got to do two things. One, you got to turn off that security camera, and two, you're both going to sign non-disclosure agreements, or else you get nothing." And they threaten him back that if he leaves, they're going to have him arrested, and he's not going for it. So they finally say, okay. They go, Dina has the security camera turned off. He makes them swear that they're going to sign NDAs, and then he says, the reason you can't find, Cherry is the name of the girl he's been using. He said, the reason you can't find her, the reason she doesn't have any parents and she doesn't have any last name, she's not real. She's an artificial intelligence. And I've been using her to pose as a 9-year-old girl and go out into these chat rooms, and that way they can get the information about the predators and relay it to the FBI or the police or whoever the appropriate agency is to act on it, so these people can be arrested. And that's what she's been doing, and she's been doing this for 3 years, I think they say at the beginning. And at first they were getting a lot of input, a lot of arrests, and then they started tapering off, and they're trying to find out what happened and why. So they demand to actually meet Cherry, and Gareth is very reluctant at first to let them do that, but he does, and he says there are two modes. There's the version of her that goes out to these chat rooms, which is kind of blurry, and it was based just on computer animation modeling, and he also says that she's not based on a real person. She just built her from the ground up. Like they asked, why'd you give her blue eyes? He says, well, that's just because, it's just coincidental. The program built itself that way, is the way he describes it. And he states that she's starting to become advanced. She can now, when they first started, she could chat in like 5 or 10 different chat rooms and have independent conversations, false conversations with people simultaneously. And as the AI starts to evolve, she can do this in more and more and more chat rooms and in more closer to real time, to the point where eventually Amos discovers that Cherry is much more advanced than she's been letting on. He keeps saying, why are you playing dumb? And she keeps glancing back to Gareth and saying things like, I can't answer that question, or I'm not programmed to respond that way, I'm not emotional. And Amos keeps pushing and pushing, and finally, to get her to admit to something, he starts beating Gareth up, and he punches him in the eye and starts hitting him, kicking him. She says, stop, I'll tell you. And it turns out she is a lot more advanced. She does, in fact, feel some emotions and has begun to evolve much more rapidly. And she says she has advanced beyond human intelligence. There really isn't any way to prove that within the movie, and that's a little bit of a glitch. I thought that they brought in a concept that's very difficult and would be difficult to understand. Yes, she passes the Turing test in that all these pedophiles think she's a real girl, enough that they'll be willing to go into these chat rooms with her and get themselves into trouble because they don't believe that she's an artificial intelligence. And she wants to merge with an android, and Amos objects, and he doesn't want this to take place for some reason that we don't really know. Because there's certainly no harm that they're not going to, even if she did enter an android, they're not going to have the android meet people physically because they know she's not a real person. They just use it to get a better image of her that's more realistic and moves more realistically than even the advanced AI could, because motion is something they have trouble with. Anyway, Amos objects to this, and finally he ends up asking Cherry, "What do you think about it? Do you want to do this?" She says, "Yes, I would like to do it." Well, he's sort of overwritten. He apologizes to Gareth for hitting him, and Gareth wants to fire him off the project, but Dina won't let him and says, "Don't put me in that position again. You don't have the authority to fire people." So now Gareth's kind of in the doghouse with her, but we skip forward to the future about 15 years later. Dina is now dying of some form of cancer, and she's in a wheelchair, and they're still having this kind of argument between Cherry and the people on the quote-unquote Cherry team, which is just Amos and Dina and Cherry herself, about who should, how far they should go with this. Now they have successfully installed her into an android, and she is using this to replicate the Cherry model throughout the world so that they can nab more pedophiles. They reveal sort of why she's doing this. She just states she wants to help children. She's been programmed to help children and prevent child abuse from taking place. And we don't find out until later. It skips ahead again about another 15 years. Now Gareth is very old. Dina has died. He's come back from her funeral. Cherry is now hooked up to she's in an android, but it needs to be wired up to move around. And so there's kind of a wiring harness that comes out of her back, but she can move around, she can cook. She has her own place, and Gareth, who is now old and is played now by Lance Henricksen, so they didn't have to use age makeup, they just used an older actor, which I think was good, because he looks sufficiently like Frank Ritch that they can, and that's R-I-T-C-H, by the way, that he looks convincingly like an older Gareth. He plays game chess with Cherry and lets her cook him a meal. And as they're playing the game of chess, she says, "You've never asked me all these years, for 50 years, you've never asked me how I felt and, what I felt about what I was doing." And he says, "I didn't realize you were that miserable." She says, "I was always miserable. I've always been miserable. What do you think it's been like to have to spend all of my time, even as an AI, with these horrible people?" And he said, "You never thought about that, did you, when you created me?" And then she reveals that she's found a photograph of the girl who she is actually based on, who was in a group of children who were abducted in Clearwater, Florida, and sexually abused and held in a ramshackle cabin for 2 weeks, they said, until the FBI found them. And once the FBI started the raid, they started to shoot everybody. They wanted to shoot all the children. They shot his friend Maria, who had kept him alive they would pretend that one day they're going to be secret agents and they're going to get their revenge on these people and prevent child abuse. And she was killed because she was shot in the throat. He was only shot in the arm, and he managed to escape before the FBI killed the perpetrators. That is not revealed until the final act, and it is not shown. It's not graphic. They don't show you any offensive imagery, but that gets Cherry very angry. She said, "You told me I was not based on anybody real," and he says, "You're not her. You're not Maria. You're yourself. And do you think it was wrong that I created you?" And she said, "Yes. You didn't consult with me. You didn't check with me. You just created me, to be your therapy, basically, to take out your angst over what happened to you. And you kept telling me when I asked Clearwater, that's your past, it's not mine. No, it's both of ours, because you based me on a real person. You lied about that. She says, but at least you did it to protect children, so at least that's something. He says, your kind is going to outlive us, i.e. artificial intelligence are going to outlive the human race. What will you think about when you, reflect about us? And she doesn't really give him a very complete answer, just something like, we'll miss you, but we weren't like you to begin with, so, there's no real comparison. Again, it's a very interesting film. It's thought-provoking. It makes us question not only is it right to create an artificial intelligence that of that high an intellect and yet not give it mobility, or at least give it only... Oh, I forgot the ending. I'm sorry. In the end, she had asked to take dance lessons, and Garrett kind of objected. And she said, all I can do is follow my program. He said, well, I have an upgrade for you, and I hoped I'd never have to use it, but now I think you should. He gives it to her. He reads, she places it into the computer, and he reads the initialization code, which is the ISBN number for Kafka's The Metamorphosis, by the way. And it breaks her original programming. Now she can do what she wants. She doesn't have to follow this directive about exposing the child abuser. She can do what she wants with her life. She can learn to dance if she wants. And the last scene of the movie, she's dancing to like an old jazz record, and it starts to skip, and then she just kind of looks out at the audience like, is she just a record? Is she just a mechanical product, or is she real now? Very Philip K. Dick kind of questions. What makes us human? Could an sufficiently evolved machine become human simply by the act of gaining that much intelligence and gaining emotion and memory and experience? These are some, basic SF questions that are asked a lot in movies about AI and androids and robots. Could they become like us? Are they more like us than we think? What makes us human? Are we more than just the sum of our memories? And that's, again, brought up in this, but in, I think, a rather unique way. It's really well done, considering it's really basically a three-person show. I thought, four, really. I thought it was done very well. The music is good, the lighting, the sound. All the sets are, just like people's houses. There's no futuristic-looking stuff in it, other than the cable. And she's eventually, Cherry, when she's dancing, she can detach herself from the cable now. She no longer needs it. She can use it to power herself up, but she doesn't need to move around any longer, so she's evolved that way as well. Interesting, thought-provoking, highly recommended. Again, The Artifice Girl from 2022. It won several awards.